Charlie Kirk's death left a power vacuum in the MAGA movement. So who will replace him? Now, if you're unfamiliar with even one of the people that you see here, please stay and watch this whole video. Because there's so much drama, and MAGA is basically having a war of succession because its most prominent voices couldn't help themselves but to use his death to further their own individual agendas. So think of this video as being a way to prepare for who and what we'll have to deal with in the future. So let's start with Ben Shapiro. He pretty much kicked off the rat race when he mentioned picking up that bloodstained microphone where Charlie left it. And between that phrasing and him throwing himself in the ring so fast, people were already side-eyeing. Shapiro was definitely one of the originators of that campus tour, debate, clip farming style of content, but he definitely never had that frat bro-y charisma of Charlie Kirk. And of course, another issue is that he seems to forget he is a religious minority in a movement of Christian nationalists. Because while Shapiro is known to spread horrible Islamophobic and anti-black propaganda, at the same time, right-wingers online constantly drop anti-Semitic comments about Shapiro. And the fact that he doesn't believe in Jesus as a religious figure seems to be disqualifying. And this is only compounded by the fact that he's super pro-Israel and very forward in his advocacy in favor of the genocide in Gaza, which has led to him losing a ton of support from the far right and being the target of conspiracies about Charlie Kirk's assassination, one of his loudest critics being Candace Owens. Now, if you're black, you may know Candace Owens because she was the person that was invited to like every single conservative podcast to say that racism wasn't real. She kind of rebranded after she had a huge falling out with Ben Shapiro over the genocide in Gaza and after constantly tweeting the phrase Christ is King, for which she was accused of using as an anti-Semitic dog whistle. Since then, she's doubled down on being super Christian and made so many videos about conspiracies exposing world evil. And I can't overstate this, but she's like the queen of conspiracy theories. Like, she doesn't really make videos about black on black crime anymore, but instead does them on topics like the missing Malaysian Airlines flight, the satanic origins of NASA, the faking of the moon landing, and Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files. The main through line on a lot of her conspiracies as of late are things that tie back to the state of Israel. And she waited very little time before insinuating that Charlie Kirk's death had something to do with this claim that his support for Israel was wavering. But because of how outlandish and unfounded that claim seems to be to others in her party, she's made a lot of enemies, including even other anti-Semites like Nick Fuentes. Now, I don't know how to describe Nick Fuentes other than like the Gen Z Satan. And that's because he has said and pushed the most vile, bigoted things ever put on the internet, and he's been banned from almost every major platform. And to illustrate just how bad he is without repeating any of his quotes, just know that there are right-wing free speech platforms that were specifically made so you could say anything that was offensive and never get banned. And even those platforms had to ban him. And he's recently gotten a lot of notoriety because the suspect in the murder of Charlie Kirk was suspected to be a member of his fandom called the Groypers, who were in conflict with Kirk for not being right enough. But it seems like that suspicion is becoming a little bit less credible, which means that they've only gotten all of this attention with little to no consequences, which only raises their profile. Now, I quickly want to mention Erica Kirk, who is Charlie Kirk's widow. As of making this video, she was officially named the new president of TPUSA, which makes her the direct and official institutional successor of Charlie Kirk. But that said, I think her reach and influence will be very much limited to within that institution. And for it, she'll do a lot of fundraising and organizational work. But she has comparatively very little social media presence and no evidence that she has the ability to mobilize an online or real-world audience through debate and political commentary. That said, Charlie Kirk even once claimed that she was far more conservative than even he was. And then you have people like J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller who generally represent the Trump administration. As leaders of the Republican Party, they literally had one job, which, if they were moral, would have been to bring the nation together and de-escalate things. But they're not, so that one job given by President Trump was to use this to turn everyone against the left. But as you've been able to see throughout this video, their party has become so extreme that they're fracturing under the weight of their own depravity and they can't even agree on a common enemy. And of course, that's no one's fault except for their own, which we can see best exemplified with Donald Trump. He built his political persona by leaning into the same conspiracy theories, bigotry, and crass insults that his party is now directing at each other. But now, to get to the point of this video, I'm going to answer the question of who I think will come out on top, and will have the level of social impact that Charlie Kirk once did. Well, I narrowed it down to the same two people that this conservative influencer put in a tweet asking who will replace Charlie Kirk, with that tweet having hundreds of thousands of forms of engagement amongst the right. And very unfortunately, I think we all need to pay attention and start preparing for the rise of Nick Fuentes. He's like the final boss of all the worst things about the MAGA movement, and that's what makes him so sticky and appealing to his fan base, which is ever growing. And more specifically, he fits the type of right-wing, white supremacist content that thrives on the internet and social media in this time period, which is likely a factor of his youth and him being a digital native, and having a fan base of people who grew up on the extreme content pushed forward by algorithms. To sum up my reasoning best, I want to repeat something that another creator said. There is a restructuring of white Christian nationalism right now, especially what kind of white Christian nationalism is pushed to the forefront. It's more ironic, it's meme forward, it's less traditional burnings of crosses, it's younger, it's nihilistic, it's chronically online. And that perfectly describes Nick Fuentes, who in the end might just be the most radical out of all of these people. But let me know in the comments if you notice this infighting and what you think the outcome of all of it will be. And if you found this video insightful, I do full-length essays on these topics of political science and history on my Substack account, which you can get to by typing historycan'thide.com, or if you're on Instagram, just comment the word newsletter and you'll be DM'd a link to my Substack. Until then, follow for more.